All right, folks, you are not going to believe what is happening in D.C. right now. Forget the usual political noise. Pro-Second Amendment attorneys are saying Congress just took a legislative wrecking ball to the foundation of nearly a century of American gun control. Trump's new budget bill isn't just a proposal. Buried inside is a direct shot at the heart of the National Firearms Act. We're talking about short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and yes, suppressors, all potentially being yanked out from under the NFA's thumb. If this holds, just picture it. You could walk into a gun shop, pick out a suppressor, and walk out with it the same day. No more $200 tax stamp. No more mailing in your fingerprints like a common criminal. No more 9-month or longer wait, just begging the ATF for permission to own a piece of safety equipment. This isn't business as usual. This is Section 7436 of the bill, and it could completely flip the script for every law-abiding gun owner in America. So today, we're going to break down exactly what's in that section, what it really means for people like you and me, and why this is so much more than a technical change. This is a signal, a warning shot, that the days of anti-2A lawmakers strangling your rights with red tape might finally be numbered. So what does this bill actually do? Deep inside Section 7436, the language pulls short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, suppressors, and even that weird catch-all category, any other weapons, or AOWs, straight out of the NFA's definition of a firearm. If that language survives, everything we've been forced to accept as normal for decades just evaporates. The mandatory fingerprint cards? Gone. The $200 tax stamp, a relic from the Great Depression? Gone. The agonizing 9-month wait just to get a yes or no from the ATF? That's gone too. It would mean one form, one standard background check, and you walk out the door. This isn't just reform, it's a jailbreak, 90 years overdue. Now, to understand why this is such a seismic shift, we have to go way back to 1934. Congress was in a panic, rattled by newsreels of Tommy gun-wielding gangsters, but they knew they couldn't pass an outright ban. The Second Amendment was still a roadblock. So they did what big government always does when it wants to control something. They taxed it into oblivion. That $200 fee might sound like a hassle today, but back then it was astronomical. A brand new Ford sedan cost less than 2 of those tax stamps. This wasn't about stopping crime. It was economic gatekeeping dressed up as public policy. It was a way to make sure that only the very wealthy could afford these firearms. And the public safety excuse? It crumbled almost immediately. The FBI's own data has shown for years that legally registered NFA firearms are almost never, and I mean never, involved in violent crime. But the laws stayed, fossilized in the federal code, long after the gangster era faded into black and white history. So let's get into the meat of it. Why is deregulating this stuff not just a good idea, but a matter of common sense? We can break it down into 4 key areas: safety, practicality, economics, and innovation. First, let's talk safety, specifically suppressors. A modern rifle blast is a violent event. It cracks the air at over 170 decibels. According to OSHA, the government's own safety agency, permanent hearing damage starts at 140 decibels. Anyone who's ever forgotten their ear pro for just one shot at an indoor range knows that concussive ringing pain. A well-made suppressor knocks that blast down by 20 to 30 decibels. Now, your rifle is still loud, louder than a jackhammer, but it brings the sound under that OSHA danger threshold. It protects your hearing and the hearing of everyone around you. It's safety equipment, plain and simple. Next up, practicality. And this is where SBRs come in. Back when the NFA was written, that 16-inch minimum barrel length made a little more sense. Gunpowders were less efficient and needed a longer runway to burn completely. But today, modern powders burn faster and cleaner in shorter barrels. More importantly, for real-world self-defense, a shorter rifle is simply a better tool for the job. Try clearing a corner in a tight hallway or navigating a narrow stairwell in your own home with a 16-inch barrel. It's clumsy. You get hung up. Those 4 or 5 extra inches can be the difference between having the advantage and being in a fatal bind. Law enforcement figured this out decades ago. SWAT teams run suppressed 10 to 12-inch carbines for a reason. Less muzzle flash blinding them in low light, better communication because their ears aren't ringing, and safer operation in confined spaces. Our troops in places like Fallujah knew it too. Yet for a civilian trying to defend their family, the law demands a broomstick-length rifle unless you pay the government a ransom and wait the better part of a year. It makes no sense. Third, let's talk about the money, the economics. Right now, the NFA process is an economic bottleneck, strangling an industry that is begging to grow. Suppressor sales have exploded in recent years, despite the red tape, mostly from new shooters who are tired of stuffing foam plugs in their ears. Analysts at the Friedman Research Group have said that if you cut the tax and kill the weight, the suppressor market could explode, just like the AR-15 market did after the assault weapons ban expired in 2004. We're talking about a massive boost for the American economy. Think about it. Companies like Silencer Co., Dead Air, and Surefire could scale up production. Titanium suppliers would need to run more shifts. Small-town machine shops could hire people to thread barrels. And with more competition, prices would plummet. Suppressors selling for just over $200, which ironically is what the government used to charge you just for the tax. This means more jobs, more local tax revenue, and more American manufacturing. It's a win across the board. Finally, let's look at innovation. Heavy regulation doesn't just slow down sales, it kills innovation. Right now, companies are pouring cash into incredible new tech. Titanium baffle designs, 3D printed Inconel cores, and quick-attach systems that are more reliable than ever. But every new idea, every tiny change to a modular part, has to get a green light from the ATF. Venture capital sees that kind of bureaucratic friction and runs the other way. This bill clears the lane. It could unleash a wave of new technology. We're talking about smart suppressors that log shot counts and track heat cycles, materials we haven't even thought of yet. Deregulation doesn't just mean more suppressors, it means better suppressors for everyone. Okay, so as soon as this news broke, the opposition rolled out the same old tired scare tactics. Let's knock them down one by one. First is the Hollywood myth, the silent assassin. You've seen it in movies. The hero screws on a can, and his 9mm suddenly sounds like a mouse fart. Outlets like the Washington Post push this fantasy every time deregulation comes up. But physics doesn't care about screenwriters. As we said, even the quietest rigs are still roaring at 125 decibels, as loud as a chainsaw. It's not silent, it's just safer. Then there's the claim that deregulation will hurt police by making guns untraceable. This story falls apart the second you look at the data. The ATF's own tracing center logs single-digit hits a year from NFA items, and those are usually stolen. No detective is solving violent crimes by digging through tax stamp archives. Criminals aren't waiting 9 months for ATF approval. They're using stolen guns. Next is the tech myth. 3D printed ghost silencers. The argument goes that if suppressors are deregulated, we'll be flooded with untraceable 3D printed cans. Let's be real, that genie left the bottle years ago. But what keeps those homemade cans from being a real threat isn't the law, it's physics. Plastic baffles melt. Cheap threads get destroyed by back pressure. They just don't work very well. That's why commercial makers use heat-treated steel, cobalt alloys, and aerospace-grade Inconel, materials your average garage builder can't work with. If anything, deregulation pushes people away from shoddy DIY projects and towards professionally made, durable, and warrantied gear. And finally, the policy myths. You'll hear that cutting the $200 tax stamp will hurt the federal budget. In a $5 trillion budget, the money from NFA stamps is less than a rounding error. It's pocket change. Then they'll say the 9-month wait is a valuable cooling-off period. The data says otherwise. The ATF denies less than 1% of all NFA applications. Delays are from bureaucracy, not red flags. A person who can pass a NICS check can already walk out with a powerful rifle today. The wait isn't about safety, it's about punishing law-abiding citizens. And maybe the best rebuttal to all of this is looking outside our borders. Countries like Finland, France, and Norway, all with far stricter gun laws than us, treat suppressors as basic safety gear. You can find them in hardware stores. They see them for what they are, mufflers. Meanwhile, here in America, we treat them like some kind of forbidden contraband. Deregulation wouldn't be breaking new ground. It would just be catching America up with the rest of the world's common sense. So if this is all such a great idea, what's stopping it? Well, this is where we get into the DC game and the legal weeds. First, there's the procedural fight in the Senate. Everything comes down to something called the Byrd Rule, which is designed to keep pure policy changes out of budget bills. And the person who makes that call is the Senate parliamentarian. Right now, that's Elizabeth McDonough. She's the one who decides if this language is a tax issue or a policy issue. If she rules it's about the budget, it could pass with just 51 votes. If she rules it's policy, it dies unless it can get 60 votes, which is nearly impossible in today's Senate. It's wild, but it's true. A single, unelected staff lawyer effectively holds veto power over the biggest pro-2A legislative move in decades. That's why supporters need to remind their senators that a parliamentarian's opinion isn't law. The majority can always overrule her. Second, there's the legal fight at the state level. Even if this bill passes, state laws don't just disappear. You'll have a patchwork mess where a suppressor is hearing protection in Montana, but a felony the second you cross into California. This is where the Supreme Court's Bruen decision becomes the game changer. Bruen flipped the whole script on gun control. It says that if a state wants to restrict a firearm, it's on them to prove that the restriction is consistent with the nation's historical tradition. And let me tell you, there's zero historical precedent for barrel-length bans or suppressor restrictions from 1791. Zero. So even if this bill stalls in the Senate, the legal challenges based on Bruen will keep coming. They will keep chipping away at the NFA's constitutionality, one lawsuit at a time. Congress can either get ahead of the curve and modernize the law now, or they can wait for the courts to tear it apart for them. Culturally, this change is already here. 10 years ago, the guy buying a suppressor was a gearhead with cash to burn. Today, it's a suburban dad buying a can to protect his daughter's hearing during her first carbine class. Social media is full of suppressed AR pistol technology. Faster than the government can process the paperwork, you know the policy is lagging behind the people. This bill isn't just about getting cool gear faster. It's about aligning the law with reality. It's about treating law-abiding citizens with respect. It's about choosing safety, practicality, and innovation over fear and 90-year-old bureaucracy. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this deep dive. Now, I really want to hear from you. If this passes, and suppressors become as easy to buy as a Glock, are you jumping in? Do you have an SBR build you've been putting off because of the NFA nonsense? Drop your thoughts down in the comments below. And while you're there, do us a huge favor. Hit that like button, share this video with your range buddies so they know what's going on, and if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed and you ring that bell so you don't miss what's coming next. We've got a lot more to talk about. Stay safe out there.